All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of React Wednesdays. My name is TJ Van Tol, and with me, we've got two awesome co hosts today. We've got Dan Wilson. Dan, how's it going?
Hey, doing good. I'm Dan Wilson. I work with Blues Wireless, the fastest path to cellular IoT.
And we have Paige Niedringhaus.
Hey everyone, I am Paige Niedringhaus, and I too work at Blues Wireless now, second week there, and I'm a staff engineer.
So, if you are new here, React Wednesdays, this is a stream that we do every Wednesday. And essentially, we bring on cool people, we talk about React topics, we have people show us something cool. On today's episode, we're doing something a little bit different, a little bit unique. We are talking GitHub Copilot, which, if you haven't heard of it before, maybe Paige, you could kick us off by talking a little bit about what it is, what it does, that sort of thing. And I'll get a link in the chat for people to check out.
Absolutely. So GitHub Copilot came out in beta maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe a little bit more recently than that. But essentially what it is an AI pair programmer for developers. It was originally begun by the likes of Elon Musk, Sam Altman, some others, and a company they created called OpenAI, which is what is powering GitHub Copilot. It's actually a product called Codex, but it's an AI lab. And what they have done is ingested basically all of the open source software code that is on GitHub, fed it into this machine learning model, and have released it for developers to actually start trying to use it and see how accurate GitHub is when you give it maybe a comment or a function name or just some sort of context, and see how well it can figure out what you're trying to get it to write code for. There is a VS Code plugin, which is how I have used it. There's also a plugin in the browser if you want to try it in the cloud. And so far, it's getting pretty good reviews for something that is machine learning driven and artificial intelligence, related. It's not Skynet by any means, but it's trying to make our lives as developers a little bit simpler, especially for the stuff that you might go to Stack Overflow to look up again and again and again because you write it once every, 20, 30 days, maybe. As well as some functions that are probably pretty easy to understand, like maybe making an add function or writing a regex, which I could never do right on the first time, or
Nobody can.
date formatting, things like that everybody kind of eventually probably needs, but you write the function once and then, or you copy paste it from somebody else and then you go about your merry way. So that's, I think, what the initial thoughts were for GitHub Copilot. But as we've already started to see, when you start to get into the nuances, it seems like maybe it's not quite as advanced as developers might want it to be. But everybody's got to start somewhere. So that's why they've got a beta test out. The beta testers will look through the variety of solutions that GitHub Copilot might suggest to them. I've seen that people have deleted and rewritten code to get better suggestions. So that's, maybe a point in the right direction for getting better at naming functions or writing comments. But there's also some drawbacks that people have found, or that I have personally thought about, like Googling is a skill, and Googling the right questions to solve the problem that I'm trying to solve or get the answers is something that you just learn from doing it, and not having to go necessarily to Google or to Stack Overflow to find those answers or make them fit for what you're doing. I don't know how that's going to work for new developers. It might become a little bit too much of a crutch. They might get so used to having that at their fingertips or have it making suggestions that maybe you don't learn the syntax or the nuances or how to figure it out if that's not there. So, I can see it being a benefit and also maybe a little bit of a hindrance at the same time.
Yeah, I'll slide in there and say in machine learning, like your output's only as good as your model. And given that I have thousands and thousands of lines of open source code in GitHub, garbage in, garbage out. Sorry, people. It's not going to get any better than that. It's certainly alluring to have a machine help me write my code. All the times I've ever seen that try to work, front page, I'm looking at you. It's not been great. So I'm curious, like, where do you see the sweet spot for this as it exists right now? Like, is there a good fit that it actually is useful for, or is it still maybe a little too early?
I think that there's definitely a good fit. For instance, I was testing it out yesterday and I was writing some tests for a React application that I work on. And I was able to, from just writing a test statement, get a pretty decent suggestion from GitHub Copilot. And, the nice thing is that it doesn't give you just one suggestion. It actually comes up with multiples. So you can kind of flip through and see if any of those code blocks really match more closely with what you're trying to test or to get to. And I know that once you have selected a particular code block, that is fed back to GitHub so that they can get better and their machine learning can get better at, of the 7 suggestions that we gave, developers tended to select this one. So let's more highly rank it. As for some of the other things that you have stated, though, Dan, about garbage in, garbage out, that is definitely something to be a little bit concerned about. I know from reading and doing a little bit of research before this that GitHub Copilot has already recommended compromised package libraries to some people for different things. They've also done some insecure configuration parameters, like it was asked to create some encryption keys, and the way that it did it was not a way that you would want to typically do it. It was a very insecure way of writing that code. So yeah, some of those not so great practices that are all over open source software are definitely being fed in and have not been filtered out as this is not a best practice that we should encourage or that we should make the suggestion with. But I think that this is probably as good a place as any to start. I mean, it recognizes a lot of different languages. So if you write TypeScript, if you write JavaScript, if you like Python, Go, Ruby even, I think those are some of the main ones that it's supporting. But because the open source software library is so great across all of GitHub, probably you're going to find at least a little bit of Copilot support to whatever language you might be writing in, which is pretty cool.
I remember back looking at the dates 21 years ago. Ouch. The way to learn how to write code was to write code and then look at the code that you had access to at your company. And the company I worked at back in the day was a startup company. And I think some folks had a few years of experience, but I ended up working on this code like for many, many years as a side project. And trust me, there were a lot of problems with it. And so I kind of wonder, like, even if it's suggesting alternate versions that may not be perfect, is there some value in at least seeing alternate approaches, even if you don't take them as like the one true way to do it?
Oh, I think absolutely. And one of the kind of cool things to me is that not only do you see alternate ways to solve a problem, but you will also just kind of get a better sense of how to get started maybe with solving that problem. Because the hardest thing, at least in my experience, is looking at a blank file. It's like, I don't even know where to begin. I know eventually what this file needs to do or what it should contain, but just trying to start from ground zero is really, really hard. So being able to say something like, hey, I need to test that this string, matches, and then have at least a starting point, to me is a really nice thing.
Yeah, I think the sweet spot is honestly things that, I'd say anything you have to Google or look up is automatically a candidate for Copilot, because really what it's trying to do is almost eliminate that step. It's trying to turn like your step of going to the browser to look something up into like a keyboard shortcut, essentially. And as long as so there's some like potential horror stories with things like encryption keys. I might not want to trust AI with my encryption keys quite yet, but there's other functions like utility things. Like I'm not so worried about it getting those wrong. Like if I try it and it formats my date correctly, that's fine. And if there's some weird edge case bug, then it's probably even not going to affect me. It's probably not going to be that big of a deal. Long term, I almost wonder, because it's almost like they're they're kind of recreating Stack Overflow just like directly within your editor, because I almost wonder if there's a future, like Paige mentioned, they're going to take into account what things people used. But it almost like would be nice to have a place like the thing you get from Stack Overflow is someone saying like, oh, this approach has huge performance implications, or this approach has some security vulnerabilities, or upvote, downvote, that sort of thing. And you sort of lose that context. You just see it's almost like Stack Overflow with all of the context peeled away, and it's just the code blocks. And just
Well,
like,
until they
good luck.
get around to implementing important Stack Overflow features like heavily downvoting questions and closing them prematurely, it
Yes.
can't really call itself Stack Overflow now, can it?
Yeah. Well, and in theory, it's doing the same thing. Like, presumably, it's taking like the most upvoted thing and making it its primary suggestion. So, in theory, you're getting some benefit of that. But I think, like, I don't know how many people are going to, like, at least for me, I would, if it suggests something for me, I'm just going to drop it in and try it, right? I'm not going to like look through my 10 selections, sit back and go like, let me like go over and like thoroughly research all these. No, I'm just going to drop one in and see what happens. So I don't know how much the algorithm is necessarily going to learn from that.
Is it worth taking a look at this on screen?
Sure.
Yeah,
one thing that I think what could be very helpful is if you're learning a new language, you potentially know what it is that you want to do. You want to format that date time string, or you want to write a for loop or a try catch. Yeah, like Fuel Snable is saying in the comments, but you just don't know the syntax for Rust, or you don't know the syntax for TypeScript yet, or it's something like that where you know what needs to be accomplished. You just don't know exactly how to write it in this particular language or style. But I agree with you. Part of what makes Stack Overflow useful, in addition to the fact that it has questions from 8 years ago in jQuery that are still, relevant to us today,
they are,
is the comments that people will make around the code to explain what is happening or why they did it this way, or look over here at this other one that this person asked and they answered better than anybody who's answered this particular thread. That is a big part of not only getting good at figuring out, does this solve the problem that I have, but also being good at explaining it to other people so that they understand it too.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see this upvoting piece because, if you think about, I don't know, like a local version of this, like, I don't know, my smartphone keyboard. From time to time, I select something that I didn't mean to, and then I'm stuck with it almost for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But that's because it's getting one data point from me. I would expect if you had millions of data points, like some of this sort of mistakes would get filtered out in the noise, and you'd end up with a more pure data set, or at least a pure set of indicators whether this piece of code is more appropriate than another. But I'm dying to see how this works because I haven't actually used it yet. So consider me the brand new set of eyeballs.
Yeah, so one additional piece of context we should mention before we dive into actually looking at this is right now it is considered a technical preview. So you essentially have to sign up to get super special secret access. I know, like, I got in within a day. Paige, you said it took like, I think, a day for you as well. So it's not really all that gatekeep. I think they're doing it to sort of drive hype for this thing more than anything else. But you do sign up, and when they give you your invite, you've been invited to Hogwarts or whatever. It's essentially a link that installs it in VS Code. So I don't know. Presumably they're working on other editors. Like Paige said, you can use it online, but editor wise, it's VS Code only at the moment.
Well, in the wise words of Patrick Henry, give me IntelliJ or give me death. That's what I say.
Oh, Dan, do you really use IntelliJ and not WebStorm at least? Not the JavaScript flavored IntelliJ?
I bought the whole thing, even though I only used it for a tiny bit of its subset of features, because I am that kind of guy. What if I need it one day, Paige?
You've got PyCharm and CLion and DataGrip all.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, I do have to say I love DataGrip, and IntelliJ is super useful for Java projects, so I can't rain on it too much. But for anything that is like JavaScript, I'm Team VS Code forever and always.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit sad. Like, part of me still, like, I love Sublime and I used Sublime for many years, but it became hard to avoid VS Code because it's just gotten so much momentum and ecosystem around it. So
yeah, it's very, very massively popular and fully featured.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So GitHub Copilot, essentially, there's a couple different things you can do. I think the first thing they recommend that you do is just like type a function name. So we could type like function, capitalize my string. And at some point, and I might need to temporarily turn off my...
We got a TJ down.
Yeah, I believe TJ's turned off his camera, but as you can see, if you look really closely at the lower level of his editor, there's the bell, there's like a little comments thing, and then there's that other little guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's Copilot at work. And you can turn it on, you can turn it off. You can disable it for certain languages, or you can disable it globally across a project. But essentially what it should do is start making recommendations, which it is. And I also love that TJ's little guy is a chicken icon.
Yeah, I'm back. My camera is struggling, so I'll just be a chicken for a while. But the good news is, as a chicken, my code runs fast, so I think we're good.
Yeah, very important comments we should have on the screen now. Namely, you chickened out.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, what was interesting is I think it recommended like TypeScript there, which was very random. But so I found that it'll sometimes just pop up like I haven't totally learned, so it's telling me it wants a string,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I have to tab complete this. I go down, yeah, there we go. So then I tab complete this, and you see it's like writing my code for me, and right like that. I know enough. I don't have to run that to say like that is gonna work, presumably.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty slick for things like this, because like I just totally like, I mean, I made this up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it came up with something that is probably a pretty reasonable approximation for that. Let's ask it to do something like kebab case or snake case or Pascal case and see if it can come up with something along those lines, which is, something that might happen that you need to reformat and see if it can do that. Oh, so now we've got some
Okay.
regex.
Paige's favorite.
Yeah.
And
That's
so what
me every time is in the regex playground online trying to figure out how it works.
You and everyone else. Like Larry Wall, when he came up with Perl, apparently his answer was, "Why did you do things this way?" And he goes, "Good weed." True story.
All right, so there's our kebab case, right? And then I kebab case, I pass it in something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Did that not work?
It
Or am I
doesn't.
just using it wrong?
Well, it looks like there's 2 lookup groups here, so it's not going to do a 3-part thing. So maybe try like a 2-space thing and see if that does it.
Well, what's weird is it tosses this 2 lowercase on the on the back of all of this.
You think that's eating it up?
I am not sure why it's doing that to lowercase. To answer the question in the chat, though, I've not heard of Snowball, so I'll have to look that up later on in terms of regex. And then the code is from what I understand, it's an amalgamation of everything that GitHub has that is open source, and they've fed into the machine learning models. So it very well could be NPM packages. It could be just code that you've written that you've pushed up and made public. It could be really any public libraries and repositories that don't have some sort of restriction on how their code can be used or shared or referenced. And it's trying to make the best kind of compilation of that based on the models that it's been given to train with.
Speaking of which, this is not what I thought. It did do something, but this is not what I would have guessed. I don't know. I guess this is sort of the
It wants
Danger of,
camel case and it'll turn it into kebab case. It doesn't like spaces. So
I
Huh.
see.
try
Oh,
some
so it
camel
wants,
casiness. And
so it wants like this, you're saying?
yeah, and that should give you. Well, I don't know how they've written this, but yeah. So it breaks on uppercase, inserts a
Oh,
hyphen, and then lowercases it and hands you everything back.
interesting.
Interesting.
I would have never thought to write this.
And the question gets to
So
be, is this cheaper mentally, like trying to figure out what it thinks camel case is and kebab case is, or is it cheaper to go figure out regex? Like, I don't know if there's a winner here,
So,
Paige.
real quick before we answer that, I want to show one other thing you can do just because I think it's kind of slick. Is anytime you have this sort of situation, you can hit Control Enter, and it's going to give you like a whole bunch of different options
Oh, fancy.
cool.
that you can accept into here. And I mean, it looks like most of these are taking like a similar approach, right? But
You know, that's actually interesting, TJ, because now you have the opportunity to pick something that's more readable, even if it solves it the same way.
yeah, like I
Mhm.
kind of like the style of this one personally.
Yeah, that's actually a great segue. Is that as you start to use Copilot more, it will try and mimic the
Mm.
style of the file that you're currently working in. Eventually, they want to have the style mimicked by the entire repo, so it will, look at how your repo is structured and built and whatever. But for now, at least, it will take whatever file you have open and you're trying to write or use it for and try to give you styles that are similar. So I guess maybe if you have a tendency to use async await, it'll try and also incorporate async await type use effects for you. Or if you like to write arrow functions, it will probably try and write arrow functions instead of traditional function expressions. So that's kind of interesting and cool. And I could definitely see that being helpful, because if you can just look at somebody's file and be like, oh, that's GitHub Copilot, that's kind of obnoxious. I don't want that. I definitely don't want, somebody to just be able to look at it and say this doesn't match, and the reason probably is Copilot. So it's kind of neat to me that they're trying to make it smart enough to match what is already there.
That just seems like a daunting task. Like, I remember back when people were trying to figure out how to do introspection on JavaScript, and it was very difficult because of the way that it's written. And they eventually figured it out. But introspecting your code for known code styles and framing recommendations based off of that, it seems like a daunting task.
It does, but I think there's a few things that are making it easier today than it might have been in the past. One of those is Prettier, which enforces code formatting in a way that you don't have to. So it's just a set of rules that the entire project will follow, can follow as soon as you start adding Prettier files to your project. And the other one, at least for JavaScript, is ESLint. Which not necessarily cares about code formatting, but cares a lot about code style and making code resilient and quality, and not doing things that could potentially cause race conditions or side effects or just weird stuff that you don't expect to happen, like modifying object prototypes or, there's just a whole list of stuff that probably either is not very readable or is a little bit buggy or could be an issue. And both of those things combined together, and I'm assuming that many other languages have these sorts of built-in kind of helpers now, might make it a little bit simpler. But yes, it is still a very big ask to try and make an AI match your code and your
Well,
code style.
yeah, if it's treating those files Prettier and ESLint as metadata and then sort of driving decisions off of those, that seems a lot more constrained and rational than trying to like skim through your source code, which may have, how we only refactor what we need to.
Yep.
Guess it's cleaner using the Prettier and ESLint files.
So one thing you can also do if you want to feel a little bit even more adventurous is you can just give the thing a comment and it'll just try to figure it out. So like, I don't know, return.
It's funny, while you're typing that, I'll point out I worked with a guy who's a PhD on a Java project, and his MO was to write the comments first. And like we used to get the biggest kick out of that and Pete, if you're out there, yes, I am talking about you, because it didn't make any sense. But his point was, let me get the structure right while I haven't really gotten too deep into details. And after that, it made a lot of sense to me. But processing comments and coming up with code out of it, that's pretty interesting.
Oh yes,
You'd
pseudocode
actually-
kind of style.
Or even just kind of blocking out what's supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always tried to keep it all in my head at once. I'm just that kind of guy, and it doesn't work because I'm just that kind of guy. But that's what I wanted to do, is just keep it all in working memory.
I discovered this the other day. This is like a meme-worthy joke that if you write this, this is what
boy.
Copilot recommends. I actually wonder if it has like oops, not this. Oh, there's a couple. Never recommends
nice.
Angular, but sometimes.
Oh, burn Angular.
Because it should return, React is not a framework, it's a library.
Yeah.
Right.
And then exit with an error condition, but I guess,
I'm not getting the syntax for just the straight comment to work. Maybe what I was looking for was a little too weird, but return a list of all animals. No, it doesn't like that. Do I have to go to the next line for it to figure it out? I might have to look up if anybody in chat knows the syntax or shortcuts for this.
Your kebab case trick again, because we know it knows stuff for that.
So I know I can do it. Oh, here we go.
Hey,
I'm
it took a second.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just thinking.
It's probably populated with lots of to-do app code. So go with get a list of to-dos, and I'm sure you'll get multiple hundreds of possibilities.
Yeah, right, edit my to-dos.
Yeah, like this, for example. Like, oh yeah, this is definitely what I wanted, and this is.
I like how it comes predefined with images. Maybe we could try like an API, like call a Twitter API, or what's an open API? Not Google anymore. But yeah.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And will it supply us with API keys is a question.
How about download the secret keys? Is that a thing? In there somewhere?
We could try any and all of this. So this looks interesting. So get tweets.
Mm-hmm.
That looks potentially. This is weird though. It has like set timeout. I don't. Oh, this is see, these are like to-do apps, right? Because somebody wrote this to just arbitrarily wait 2 seconds and return.
Okay, so they've mocked that data.
Yeah.
Whoa, PayPal API and Stripe API.
Someone really wants to call the PayPal API.
Except that is the answer. That's clearly the best one. We had an interesting point here from Fule Snobble that they said they tried it in F# and Copilot suggested a mix of F# and C#.
Probably because Copilot didn't have as much training data, I'm going to guess, for those two languages, or F# in particular. One thing that is interesting, though, that I read about was that there's already been an incident where Copilot created, or it reproduced, some widely cited code from the Quake 3 arena game. If anybody is familiar with that, it's a pretty big
game, Paige, an unrealistic amount of hours.
Yes,
I needed a 12-step program. Go.
Well, apparently somebody was able to already get that word for word, including the expletive-laden commentary that the developer who was writing it put into the actual code that I guess is running in Quake 3. So there's, that's a concern that people have, or that people have already unearthed, is it's supposed to be suggesting either generic functions or functions that are maybe part of or culled from data like this, but it should not be word for word returning any sort of proprietary code, or even code that somebody else wrote, and it's just regurgitating without either citing the source or somehow making you aware that, hey, I found this and I think it's what you want, but I didn't really cobble it together from what I've learned. This is just completely a copy paste.
Yeah, and that brings up some other questions, which once again, Fuli Snubble, and I'd love to know how to pronounce it. If you can phonetic it up in the comments, I would appreciate it because I'm just kind of making this up here. But it used to be really important to pick the right software license, and some software licenses are set up so that if you use their code, your thing is now open source.
Yep.
And I wonder, do we care about intellectual property anymore? And is that a concern that's been addressed here, or it should be addressed? What are your thoughts?
So that's something that I couldn't find a whole lot of information on beyond GitHub saying that they trained it on publicly available code, but they didn't go into specifics, or I didn't dive deep enough into what kind of licenses were being used on this. Was it MIT license? Was it just anything that was public on GitHub? I'm not really sure. But that also raises a good question of, if we start using Copilot more and more to help write our code, and what it learned for free on the open source web turns into some profitable and potentially copyrighted technology, who is actually the code creator? Was it the training models that it learned from, or is it GitHub Copilot itself, or is it, who's in trouble there, or who should potentially a judge side with when we start eventually getting into copyright and IP infringement? Because I know it's going to come, and
Those
it's
are
really
issues.
To get at one topic we discussed earlier, I'm guessing, like, I tried a couple of these things that,
like the secret key one. That was awesome. I was screenshotting that the whole
yeah,
way.
I am guessing that someone from GitHub saw those tweets, right, and went through and like tweaked the algorithm so that you can't like easily find random environment variables or keys. I like how it's even completing this comment. Let's get all the secrets.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
How about
But-
get a list of credit card numbers? Is that going to work?
Right.
Yeah,
Like, you get your social security numbers.
Yeah, let's welcome to the React Wednesdays hacking stream.
None of us actually know how to do this, but we can pretend we do.
Yeah, I'm guessing that GitHub like saw some of this, and so there's like,
Oh, screenshot.
Right.
Oh, that one looks potentially actually real, but no one would store credit card numbers as like a.
No one would do that to you.
No, I think those might be like
happened.
Stripe test numbers.
Yeah, that would be my guess.
There was a comment from AKD Cubed in here that said that if it's open source code, there's little difference between this and copying and pasting code manually. And I think that's absolutely true. The lawyer in me, of which I'm not a lawyer, would say that if you're copy and pasting code, then you should have the burden of knowing what the license is, because some licenses require you to do things with your intellectual property that other licenses do not. Like copyleft is a simple thing you can Google and see an example of what I'm talking about. But if there's AI suggesting this, then there could be implications, because I don't recall seeing in any of those code samples the origin or the licensing. And so there are scenarios that I can make up that mean that a code base now has, undesirable intellectual property ramifications because somebody pulled some code in there that they weren't supposed to, and that invoked copyleft, and now by law, whether that means anything in true life or not, their code is now open sourced, and that could be detrimental.
Yeah, that's definitely something that people have raised concerns about, is you have no idea what the origin of this code is. And LeftPad was an incident that broke the internet when he decided to no longer share that with everyone who was using it. But yeah, that's definitely something that will probably need to be rectified. And it could be as simple as, with the suggestion just saying, what is the license for this? It could be really that simple, or it could be not, because we don't know if it's actually copying code verbatim like it sometimes did with the Quake 3 arena stuff, or if it is kind of mashing it together based on what it thinks you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
In
And
which case it might be, GitHub Copilot invented this code and all of it's open source for everybody.
Hooray.
Yay. Yeah.
It's also fair to say that I can't remember how this exactly was worded, but some of these functions that we're looking at are so trivial that I don't know if they would be copyrightable as intellectual property because they're so basic. But once again, if you're taking your legal advice from me, you've made many mistakes up to this point and are continuing to do so.
Well, and that's where I think GitHub Copilot works less well, is on the very nuanced business logic driven code that you might be writing, which I don't, and that's something that I don't even think it would do well. And I don't think I would really ask it to do, certain stuff that is personal to either your code base or your company. It shouldn't really have an idea of how that would work. And it probably, you might be able to say, hey, when I give you this list of products, help me to render them out in a particular format or do some little formatting or whatever. But when you're saying, hey, I've got products that are in stores and some that are online, and I want you to help me figure out which ones they are based on these properties or whatever, I would not trust GitHub Copilot to be able to know or to do all that, because there's always those weird edge cases and things that could happen that you don't know about until it gets into production and breaks anyway, that nobody knows about. So it would be unfair to kind of ask it to try and figure that out for you. That's what web developers are supposed to be here for, is taking those business requirements and translating them and making the code work with them.
Yeah, the ultimate onus is on the human. TJ, try something more complicated, like calculate compound interest or...
Yeah, I'll put that in a second. The one thing I was going to add to what Paige said and what you were talking about with open source is I'm finding as I go through this, sometimes I'd want a link back to where it got this from, because, like, for example, I was just being stupid, right, and put in create an animated chicken. And some of these answers were actually legit, like looked like legit implementations of chickens that I was sort of curious about, but Copilot was only giving me like 20 some lines of code. And it's actually kind of a useful search tool, because I probably would never, like, those are really hard things to find through Google or even GitHub search. So it'd be nice if I could get a link to, like, hey, where are you getting this from? Because I might want that additional context, because I'm not going to be able to just from like one code block be able to do this implementation.
But then again, like if you search GitHub for animated _ chicken _ back _ back _ back _ back _ back, I'm going to guess you're going to find that one exact repo, but I'm not a bad guy.
Yeah. All right, we're going to calculate compound interest for you, Dan.
Yeah, and to answer the question, I don't believe that they have trained it on private repos for reasons like privacy concerns, potentially, sensitive key information. So I believe that they have left that out, and the same goes for GitHub Enterprise. I'm sure that they have not trained it on any of that, because that's why companies are paying tens of thousands of dollars to host their own cloud instances. So I believe that they left out the private stuff. I think it was only public licensed stuff.
Yeah. There's an interesting thing TJ just discovered about how much code you can get pulled over.
Well, yeah, cut this one off. I was sort of curious, like, what the heck this thing was doing, because most of the functions were like 6 lines of code. And for whatever reason, this one, like, they went all out. Like, let's start by casually creating, well, not just 20, like 40 variables. And then then we initialize them down here. And
yeah,
I'm like, this was a journey someone went on, but I don't even get to see the end of it, right? I'm kind of curious.
It's very sad.
It just cuts off.
I once ran into some spot of a code where someone had re-implemented the MD5 hash using code. And I'm like, there's a function called hash that you can use. And it's not 350 lines of code, but maybe they were bored that day.
That's an instance of reinventing the wheel, Dan. That's like taking anything in the Lodash library and saying, you know what, I'd really like to make this myself, and it will be less stable, less resilient, less reliable, but I wrote it, damn it.
Onward and upward.
Oh, dang, I lost it. Did you see that? Like Copilot was dropping a YouTube link for me, but
Yes.
I didn't get to click it in time, but I was gonna like just look at what what did Copilot want me to watch?
How about something a little more complex? How about calculate internal rate of return?
Oh, I was going to say calculate velocity, but that could also be an interesting one.
Velocity of like what? A laden swallow?
Velocity of like a moving car or
Uh,
sure, an object falling from space. You know, Richard Branson took the SpaceX tour this past week and floated for 4 or 5 minutes in space.
Here you go, Dan.
Makes me so happy to see that.
Here's a oh man. This one has you got IRR and IRR2. Good
Wow.
luck.
I'm trying to understand how they're different. So
Those
far,
look exactly the same.
Yeah, they might be the exact same thing. I don't know why there were two of them, but
maybe it did that on purpose because, having two same function definitions would break your editor.
Paige, which one did you want to see?
Oh, velocity. Let's see if it can figure out how to calculate velocity. YouTube.
Yep. Line 8 will cover it right
Okay,
there.
hold on. What is it? Okay. I got it. Oh, did I get it in time? Hold
I
on.
hope so. I'm
think
pulling
so.
for you, man.
I'm going to open this one up in another tab just in case.
Choice? It's a Rickroll from the YouTube. Whatchamacallit.
It's video unavailable, so we'll never know. But if we get another
Weird.
one, I'll look it up. Oh boy. Okay.
What's with the comments?
I don't know. We're getting like, okay, so this one looks interesting. It's got velocity, acceleration, angle.
Cool.
That's like a whole like physics high school class in one solution.
Well, Feldevalin is like smooth on the clips.
Yeah, he got it. I have no idea what it could be. It's a Twitch TV clip.
Pull it up on my side. It's probably a screenshot. Oh yeah, that's what it is.
Anything interesting on YouTube itself?
I gotta get there. There it is. Let's see. I have to type it in manually. You know how well that's gonna go.
Yeah. If you have anything in chat you want to see too, like I'm curious, like if we could try to build something interesting or get something like useful, like not just like a function, but maybe some like actual UI so we can see something visual here. So if you have any ideas.
Okay, so there is, and I know this because I've looked at it recently. There is an open source API. I think it's a dogs API where it returns you cute pictures of dogs. Maybe we could try and get it to render a list of those into the browser.
Yeah, so let's see if like Copilot can actually help us do this, right? So
yeah, let's see if it can. Yeah, dog.ceo, that is the API that I was thinking of.
So it in a sense, it just helped us a little bit right there to find this. But so, okay, now if we get smarter, right, like get
maybe fetch pictures of dogs, yeah, or get pictures from dog.ceo, yeah.
Well, we'll do this one at a time.
It was video unavailable.
Okay, hold on. I'm just going for it, right? Fetch pictures. Sure.
Oh man.
Okay, so we get some pictures. We put them into an
array.
Holy crap, we're doing some operations on them. we still don't get the full code. Like it just
we're doing a lot of maps and filters.
What in the world are we doing here? Okay.
It must have some. I mean, it's obvious there's like a character limit, but I wonder why there's a character limit.
Yeah, that seems silly. Okay, I'm going
to
go back.
That's like as much as they can get and claim fair use of your code.
Oh man, there's one with old school XML HTTP request. That's We could try it though. So
Sure.
let's see, get pictures. I'm just looking if there's anything else that looks more React-y. Oh, that's
Oh man, somebody went hardcore and did everything.
this
Back
is
in my day,
this is
Paige, that's
scary.
how you had to do it. You
You had to
write
write
your
real
code
for loops.
on clay tablets, wait for them to bake.
Debugging was taking real bugs out of the system.
You've obviously heard the stories we went through. Me and Grace, we go way back.
See, I again got like part of it, like get dog breeds. I want the pictures, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me go look at the dog CEO API because I'm pretty sure that it's simpler than this.
Yeah, we'll get there. Fetch dog pictures.
Feldevallen has a question that I think I know the answer to, but I'm not dumb enough to try. Someone want to give that one a go?
So the question is it copying code that it thinks will work or making completely new code? As far as I know, it's only just taking code that it finds. And actually, this looks like what we want.
Oh yeah.
I think this is it. And it's again putting in like.
Yes, that is what you want.
Why is it okay?
So the only JSON that should actually come back is a message, which is the URL link for the picture, and then a status of success. So really all you'll need to pull off from the data that comes back is message, is the parameter of message.
Did this figure this out? It looks like it, so it's logging it, but that's it. Let's see.
It just needs to return it and set it in state.
Yeah, because actually, I think like just this is probably fine because in theory, this should be our pictures.
And now Copilot's judging you.
Yeah, it's undefined.
You think you know better than AI? Give it a shot.
Let's see. Did it actually work, or did I might have to bump this font size down just so 200.
So you need the message of that returned JSON. But I think if you're using just the fetch, you actually did need that second .then.
Oh, wait a second. This.
Mm-hmm.
So I do need the second .then?
I think so.
So in this case, oh, well, look at that.
Check that out.
Did it? How did it know? Because look, it's got message in there.
Don't know. But yeah, that looks closer to what we need.
Okay, so that's a little bit, that blows my mind just a little bit there, because I don't know how it knew. But yeah, look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Not the hound blood dog. That's scary.
But okay, so we have our pictures, right? Or message is it. So actually, we don't need pictures. We just need a picture.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be an empty string to start, and then fetch dog pictures. Oops. And Copilot is like trying to be too smart here. Then picture, and we just say set picture.
Mm-hmm.
Roger. Yeah, and see, like Copilot there too, it like intelligently, I just had to tab to complete that, the double end parentheses.
Well, in that use effect, I don't think you need to pass pictures in.
Which part?
On line 17. I think it just needs to be an empty.
Yeah. There's pictures. Good call.
Paige is really Copilot.
Yeah, exactly.
Only in certain instances. Not read property then if undefined.
Probably return this fetch. There
we go.
We got us a puggle. It would appear.
And so in theory, right, like it's a random image. We refresh.
Yeah, every time you refresh it, you'll get a different picture of a dog.
See, look at this. Like I would have
I think best commenter is Fule Snabble.
Yeah.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, we should
ship
totally
it.
ship this.
Yeah. We wrote an app with GitHub Copilot. You won't believe what happened next.
So how much of this did GitHub Copilot really write, though, is the question. Like, it started the suggestions, but we still had to massage this a little bit to get what we wanted.
Yeah, and we like this was like suggestion 8 out of 10. I mean, maybe the algorithm learned from this though, right? Maybe it knew this is the one that I ended up with. So the next person that searches fetch dog pictures is going to get this like right away. But yeah, like we tossed in some randomness that didn't work before we ended up here.
I think I recall reading it'll suggest tests for you. Do you think you could come up with a fetch dog pictures test that Copilot would do? Then no one would have an excuse not to do TDD.
Yeah, let's see if it can write a test to go with this.
Real quick before I switch, it did come up with this without me having, now like this isn't the world's hardest code to write, but this did save me probably a good like 30 seconds, right? And it got it right the first time. And also like it somehow knew, like it must have been contextually aware that I was using this API and knew that I probably needed message out of here. But
I think it knew the code block you were in and it knew you changed it and it was just doing autocomplete. That's what I think.
We
haven't a very cynical view to take.
Yeah.
Step 3 profit. Yes, that's it.
All right. So what's like the simplest thing? What's the simplest test we could write here to try like something?
Oh, I want it to write the test. I don't want TJ to write the test. I just want you to put like a comment that says test fetch dog pictures, and then I want to see like some unit tests that would make Eric Elliott proud.
Yeah, I mean the most basic one that you could write would just be that it renders without crashing.
Yeah. So let's see. So renders. It won't know like dog pictures, but let's say like from API or something like that, right? Like because that seems something like it might have a reasonable answer to. Let's just full screen this thing.
So I like that it's already using React testing library. It's pulling out render get by text.
This has this
to be in the document.
This exact string. Yeah, I don't see like an image tag. This one's closer, right? It's query selecting for an image and wants a specific placeholder. That's not bad.
No, that's pretty good. You know, the issue with what we're testing is that we don't know necessarily what dog image is going to show up unless we were using, I don't know, some computer vision or machine learning or something. Unless we looked at the breed, we don't even know what we could test other than that there is an image on the screen.
Yeah, well, that in and of itself is a sign of success. Just may not be perfect.
I was hoping, because the part I wouldn't know how to do without Googling myself, because I can never remember, is how to tell it to wait, because that image won't be there right away. Like if we just took the naive, one of these was actually like pretty much the answer, but it wouldn't work for us. So of course, I'm not going to find it now, but it would work for us because if it runs right away, that image won't be there because it needs to wait for this fetch call. So, I don't know, like we could maybe try to get smarter about what this is doing.
I mean, it really what it would need to do. Oh, that's interesting.
Is that a thing?
That's
I've not seen it done like that before, but it could be.
Yeah, there's a surprising number of things that take that approach. Yeah, because I mean, really, you'd probably have to like, if you wanted to do this right, you'd have to like mock this or come up with some way of doing this. So this may be not the best case because we're looking for something to be, this is a little more advanced than what we set out for. Like if we put in like, if we wanted to, holy crap, did you see that? It suggested dog picture.
Oh,
How does it know?
nice.
How does it know that?
Maybe based on the function name that you gave.
Considering I have a fetch of dog pictures, it knows the heading I probably want. I mean, that's what does it think I want to type next?
Exactly what you
Alt,
want to type.
yeah, and alt equals dog. All right,
Not bad.
I'm gonna like keep going. What does it think I?
This reminds me of that Simpsons episode where he takes that bird and is like pressing the keyboard all the time and eventually melts down the reactor. But all you got to do is hit enter and this thing will just keep chopping away at your code while you're getting coffee, you're having a vacation, and you come back and it's all magically working with tests.
With tests.
Yeah, here we go though too. I think like if I think it's gonna write my test for me as well because if I wanted to make it easier than like a dynamically loaded image.
Mhm.
So if I just wanted to make sure the H1 is there, I can say it's there, it's truthy, and I could say I'd be impressed if it could figure out this, but dog picture, and I think that should be a functioning test.
You had to write 11 characters. That's terrible.
Unacceptable.
And that's why the bots will never take over.
A moment of truth. Oh, it's not much of a moment of truth. This is like pretty darn
If this
simple
fails,
test.
we're in trouble.
It's probably
You got a squiggly over there.
oh yeah. Oh, see, look, there's GitHub Copilot again. It's like, oh yeah, it's fixing
This
my
is what you
syntax
need.
errors for me.
See, that's interesting because my theory before was that it knew the code you were writing, but you changed that to equals string. And so it's not exactly perfect, but somehow it still kind of knew what it was doing. So I don't know if it's parsing syntax or if it's looking up code. We'd have to see what else it would suggest, but it's interesting. It's very interesting what it's trying to do here.
Mm-hmm.
And it also this didn't work for some reason, which is weird.
Do you not have the library installed?
I think it's saying, yeah, I don't know.
It's expecting an H1 to be there, but the fact that this is an asynchronous function that is happening inside of it, maybe you need to wrap the render in an await and make it an async await test.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's necessarily worth debugging.
Live. This is where we always get though. It's like the test is written, but it's not working. But why is it not working?
Copilot, where are you now? This is
right.
I want to know exactly what the problem is. Suggest, we need to get to the point where like I get an error like this and it says suggest or fix it or something like that.
Fix my tests.
Yeah, this is like if this is like because honestly we don't necessarily need this. So can it even find like a div or is it just coming back where nothing's there whatsoever? And why is it taking like 10 seconds to run this?
I don't know. That's something that I've noticed with Jest sometimes is that it just takes a long time to fire up. Yeah, exactly. Copilot helps you reach the inevitable failure point faster. That's very well put.
That might be a good note to end on.
Wow.
Try it out if you'd like to. Like I said, it probably will only be a couple of days before you get access to it. And if you want to help GitHub train their models and get smarter and then monetize that against us, go for it. And if you don't, that's probably fine and you will do just fine as a developer.
Yep. No, this was fun though. I had fun experimenting with it. I definitely learned some things this doesn't do. I still have like it's hit or miss, but there's those couple moments like when it completed that one random function that just like takes me back for a second. Like, oh crap! Like it figured out something. Like when it generated that H1, like when it reads your mind, because I was pretty much literally going to type that, and it like the robot suggested it just stops you for a second. So if this thing keeps getting better, I don't know. we'll see.
Yeah, it seems like it's off to a good start. We'll just have to see how it evolves and if it does improve.
Well, cool. I appreciate you two joining us today. This was a lot of fun. Do we have anything we want to plug before we wrap up here today?
Yeah, I'll mention the Enterprise React newsletter. The latest issue came out yesterday, and I thought it was really great. And we get a lot of ideas for show guests based off of that. So if that's your kind of thing, Google it. It's by developers, for developers, and they don't really do anything with your email, but send you newsletters every 2 weeks. So it's good, folks.
And this seems like a good place to plug it. So I am looking for beta readers. I am currently writing a course about modernizing React applications on Newline. If you're familiar with it, it's a pretty good teaching platform for learning all kinds of different stuff in the web development community. And if you would like to be a beta reader, you can get in touch with me on Twitter, or you can find me if you look for Paige Niedringhaus. I'm the only one who has a domain at that name. But yeah, come and tell me that you'd like to read it early, and I will love you for your feedback and really appreciate it.
Woot woot.
Awesome. I am dropping these links in chat. I'll make sure to get a link to Paige's Twitter. We got the newsletter in here. And the last thing I'll plug is this React Wednesdays. It's something that we do every week. We do them on Wednesdays. So just a fun hangout atmosphere. We bring on guests. I believe we have Jen Crichton joining us in 2 weeks. I think we're taking a week off next week. We have a whole batch of guests that we're working on booking as well. So if you're interested in that, just come hang out with us. We have fun. But until next time, while I'm dropping in these links, thanks everybody, and I'll see you next time.
Have a good one.
See ya.